Namaste. Thank you very much for watching this video presentation. Within this given time frame, I will be presenting you the macro perspective of agricultural and natural resources development and management in the country, and then I'll talk to you about the case study conducted in Nuwakot district, and then finally I'll make my recommendations for sustainable agricultural and natural resource management in Nepal. Nepal government has recently launched a long-term agricultural development strategy, envisioning that by 2035, Nepal will have self-sufficient in food production, will have self-reliant, competitive, inclusive agriculture, and all leading to sovereignty, food sovereignty by 2035. The agricultural development strategy has identified 4 flagship programs followed by 4 core programs in the area of governance, productivity, profitable commercialization, and competitiveness. And many of those ongoing commodity-based programs are grouped on the other programs under this strategy. The current major agricultural programs in Nepal includes Prime Minister Agriculture Modernization Project, Zero Hunger Challenge National Action Plan, Multi-Sector Nutrition Plan, and of course this Agricultural Development under 14th 3-year plan. All of these programs are intended to realize food self-sufficiency, agricultural growth, and economic development in a very short period of time, in a way, within the next 10 years or so. In addition to these major programs, there are several multilateral, bilateral, and other programs scattered across the country. These programs have been launched by our donor agencies or bilateral agencies such as World Bank, Asian Development Bank, USAID, DENIDA, DFID, and SDC. The government of Nepal has expanded its annual expenditure on development and economic growth substantially in the past 25 years or so. For example, the 7th 5-year plan has annual expenditures of 5.8 billion rupees, which has been increased by now to over 1,300 billion rupees annual expenditure. Despite so much of investment on agricultural growth and overall economic development of the country from many different sectors, the growth of agricultural GDP is still stagnated at around 3%, and Nepal's agriculture sector is still characterized as being at a very low development stage. Due to this very low productive agriculture, the trade balance in Nepal has also been in trouble. In recent years, the negative trade balance has been increasing in a very high rate, and in recent years it has reached as high as 5,700 million US dollar in trade deficit. Nepal's agricultural trade deficit has been very heavily skewed with India, as out of almost $6 billion trade deficit annually, $4 billion trade deficit occurs with just one country, India, and major imports coming from India includes agricultural commodities and petroleum products. And Nepal's deficit in food production, relying so much imports, has resulted on serious socioeconomic impact, as still 25% population is below the poverty line, 41% children suffering from stunted growth and chronic malnutrition, and over 5 million youths have left Nepal for foreign employment. So these socioeconomic conditions, agricultural status clearly indicate that Nepal's agricultural sector is seriously experiencing downward spiral, and there is an urgency of developing appropriate programs and implementing them very successfully. The success of agricultural sector depends very heavily on natural resource sector. For example, irrigation is one of the major components of agricultural development, and in Nepal, out of potentially 2 million hectares of irrigable land, has only less than 500,000 hectares throughout year irrigation facility. So still there is a long process to go for agricultural development, and especially some programs, they are very crucial for agricultural development, such as soil and water conservation, agroforestry and community forestry, or some watershed management practices, etc. These many programs are in other ministries than the Ministry of Agriculture. As a result, there is a challenge of close coordination on those programs and activities. They are very important for successful agricultural development and also natural resource management in the country. So with this huge gap of the programs, coordinations, implementations, and downward spiral of agricultural sector in recent years, I'd like to bring you to this case study in Thulokhola watershed in Nuwakot. This project was started in 2011 with funding from USAID in collaboration between the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, Louisiana, USA, and several partners from Nepal. That includes Nepal Agricultural Research Council, CARE, Nepal Agricultural Development Bank, Tribhuvan University, Asta-Ja, and many other stakeholders at the local level. This Thulokhola watershed was a kind of a case study for climate change adaptation in recent years to understand how climate change is occurring, or how climate change impacts are occurring in the smallholder farming system, and how farmers are adapting to that. For this, we had several project partners meeting in Kathmandu, and also we had several watershed visits and workshops on project implementation, or water quality monitoring, goat production management, as well as we had several focus discussion groups organized to understand farmers' perceptions on climate change adaptation and impacts as well. And also we had a very full-fledged household survey where the graduate students from Tribhuvan universities participated as enumerators for this survey, which was followed by this participatory rural appraisal and pretty extensive spring survey. Also, the fecal samples collected from cattle, goats, buffaloes, as well as soil samples from field and fodder samples, all were analyzed in the laboratory to understand the status of those systems. Based on those results, the smallholder mixed farming system is still a predominant farming system in this Thulokhola watershed, with family having goats, cattle, buffaloes, and their irrigated agriculture, unirrigated agriculture, etc. And these family farms are run by family members largely. So smallholder mixed farming system is still a predominant system, in the watershed. And animal health was a major problem, as goat has as high as 53.8% of helminthes prevalence rate in the watershed. Similarly, this land degradation, acidification of agricultural land, water shortage were serious issues. Based on the spring survey, 72% of the springs were experiencing decreased flow over the past 10 years, whereas 13% of springs were completely dried out in the watershed, and mostly those local springs, they are on the shallow surface, were the one drying out first. The water quality issue was also a major one, specifically with the fecal coliform contamination. An historical data set showed a consistent decline in precipitation as well as discharge from a nearby Thulokhola in this area. So with this condition, it is clear that the first and foremost activity to be done in current context is developing an integrated agricultural and natural resource management strategy in the federalized governance and administrative structure. And while developing this integrated strategy, it is pretty important to consider these 5 key drivers of agricultural transformation, which include commercialized smallholder mixed farming system, incentives for the farmers, landowners, pro-poor market, strategic public investment, and appropriate policies and laws. And these drivers have to be very well embedded with those Asta-Ja Framework, which includes 8 J: Jal, Jamin, Jungle, Jadibhuti, Janashakti, Janavar, Jalavayu, and Jarajuri. That means agricultural system is a part of this whole natural resource system, which is Asta-Ja. And also the diaspora is a major resource for knowledge transfer. And if there is an appropriate mechanism and demand clearly identified, the knowledge base of diaspora can be a valuable resource for agricultural and natural resource development in the country. So with these integrated development initiatives, there will be a better connection between producers, landowners, government agencies, more comprehensive policies could be formed, and they can be implemented in a better way, and there will be improved monitoring and evaluation of the programs. There will be better infrastructural development, food self-sufficiency will be ensured, and overall sustainable agricultural and natural resource development goals will be realized. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation with emphasizing that Nepal is experiencing a downward spiral on agricultural and natural resource system, and agricultural development initiatives should be focused on key drivers of agricultural transformations and the Asta-Ja Framework, and successful technology transfer is possible with an appropriate mechanism set up and clearly identified demand from the government side. And with this, the need of the day is the development of an integrated agricultural and natural resource development and management strategy for Nepal. Thank you so much for your attention.